Right. Hello, everyone. I am Alex Lim, your host, and welcome to AuthorStory, the home of authors and stories that matter. This episode's featured guest is Elke Scholz, the author of this episode's featured book, Anxiety Warrior. So, Elke, welcome to AuthorStory. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Super excited to be here.
Great. Okay, so first, let's talk a little bit about your background. You are now a registered psychotherapist with the CRPO College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, and you're also a certified therapist in both Canada and the United States. And
Yes.
how long have you been practicing for?
Well, with the registration and all these official titles, 12 years, though
Mm-hmm.
probably over 30 years as a facilitator.
Wow,
We just
okay.
recently regulated in Ontario.
I see, okay. So there are quite a few abbreviations that I mentioned, like CRPO and EMDR. What are these all about?
Well, I'm EMDR is a top tier therapy. It's been used for trauma for over
Mm-hmm.
40 years,
Okay.
very much research based.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is I am also a registered education consultant for expressive arts therapy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And I'd like to go a little bit into this. What does it take to get certifications? I mean, is this just, how long do you have to train, in other words, to before you get these sort of certifications?
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a great question. And first, I had to get my master's in psychology. So
Okay. All
before
right.
I could do anything else, I needed to have that, and
Uh-huh.
it took me 6 years. However,
Mm-hmm.
I had to break that up.
Mm-hmm.
Other people may be able to do that in 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So in other words, I mean, not just anyone can get these degrees. I mean, this really takes intentionality and effort and also time before you get these certifications.
Absolutely. The EMDR took me 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one, probably the one that's international with expressive arts. That that process probably took a year
Mm-hmm.
because what you need to do is say meet all the criteria of why they would have you as a consultant.
Okay. All right. So these are science-based certifications, correct? I mean, you
Yes.
you have to have a grounding, like you have a master's in psychology, so you really have to have a science-based grounding in what psychology is and everything related to it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're right. And also, my fascination is neuroscience. So,
Mm-hmm.
expressive arts and EMDR are very much working with the neural pathways in the brain.
Right.
And yes, it's a fascination and an interest. And
Okay.
it is part of my private practice. So, I do
Mm-hmm.
practice full time.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So, all right, got that. But there's also how do I put this, an artistic aspect to the work you do because you're also a painter, you're also an art coach, and you're also the manager of an art studio in Toronto. So, first off, when did you get into painting?
Oh, well, I don't manage any studio. I don't know where
Oh,
that was, but that's okay.
okay. All right. Mistake.
I actually support myself in the sense of my own creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I see myself more as an author. I've written 4 books, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course I have this my private practice, which is full time. And my passion really is to help people and help their journey to be an easier journey for life, to help people to thrive. So the books were born out of that passion in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of making strategies accessible. I always
Mm-hmm.
say, the books cost less than a pizza. So
Okay. Okay.
the idea is to make it easy for people if they need some coaching or strategies
Mm-hmm.
to put that out there, and thus doing shows like what we're doing today.
Right. And I find it personally interesting because I mean, not many people would think of I mean, creativity and science being, something that they could join together. I mean, they're usually viewed as,
Okay.
exclusive to each other. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I hear what you're saying. And this is so fascinating. I've always known that the arts helped neural pathways and help people to transcend either feelings or trauma. And so was a facilitator for a long time. I've done a lot of group work for people with trauma issues and
Mm-hmm.
addictions. And the arts is like half of our world is really nonverbal. So
Mm-hmm.
the way we move, the way we sing, dance, move, drum, music, sound, and even being expressive. So it
Mm-hmm.
isn't always about drawing pretty pictures or making a song. It's more about expression, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not that strong in those elements in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Other cultures have that. Our First Nations do. Um, other cultures, Eastern cultures, are a little bit stronger. And you're right, creativity does play um, a strong connection with uh, science. And one of my statements is that even math and language are so interconnected and can even help children in their pathways to excel in school. And that is evidence-based. We've done different programs in the schools
Mm-hmm.
to bring more creativity to children that were struggling, and they actually jumped grades
Mm-hmm.
within weeks. So yes, it's actually very powerful.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So great question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And and thanks for the answer. I mean, you know, and you essentially put these two interests of yours together, creativity and the sciences. But before we continue, I'd just like to go into a bit of a sidebar. You work with attachment? I mean, your interests lie in attachment, trauma, loss, recovery. Can you define
Yep.
what these terms are, scientifically, so we can have an objective viewpoint of what these things are?
Well, um, our brain, our brain will hold what we call big T's and little t's. So the T is little traumas or big traumas. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people think that trauma or post-traumatic stress, any of
Mm-hmm.
those things, loss, recovery, are from catastrophic traumas. So
Okay.
fires, floods, loss, death, accidents.
Right.
However, it also sometimes the brain will grab smaller traumas. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a right or wrong that anybody's done anything. We do collect belief systems. As children, we're sponges, and we may have incorrectly downloaded a belief system from our tribe or family, whether it's from a parent. We blame our parents, so parents, be easy on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You get
Mm-hmm.
blamed a lot. However, it could come from a teacher, a neighbor, a
Mm-hmm.
minister, a family friend or relative, and it's a natural thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
what happens? So attachment can also be how you've attached to your parents. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have a safe attachment, or maybe you don't? You have, you get really triggered if somebody leaves, or those kind of things. And then loss recovery. Loss is a type of trauma, and loss
Mm-hmm.
can come in so many different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
any change is a loss, even a good change. For example, somebody got a new job and moved and left their community, and as
Mm.
exciting as that can be, there's the loss of the home, the family, the friends, the
Right.
community, and coming, even though the job is exciting. And
Right.
so there's this loss recovery. Loss isn't always about losing a loved one, which of course it still is, but
Mm-hmm.
um, so it's just being aware of those things. And I do talk about that, and try to make it simple. And I think it's about self-awareness, Alex,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of how we manage some of these things, because it's life, right?
Right. Right. And this is interesting. I mean, you do mention these things are. I mean, these things do happen, and our brains, as you said, they grab onto these big T's and these small T's. What is it about our brain that it does that? I mean, what's the reason behind that? I mean,
That's a great question.
I'm thinking the brain's not gonna do something like this unless there's a reason, right?
Absolutely. So here's the interesting part, and we could do a whole show on that you are not your brain, and
Okay.
so the brain is the first organ to form in utero.
Mm-hmm.
And what does the brain start doing right away? It's
Mm-hmm.
an organ,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Right.
it starts immediately to collect data. It
Mm-hmm.
also starts managing with that data.
Uh-huh.
And so then when we're born, the brain continues to collect data. And
Mm-hmm.
with that data, collects thoughts, reactions, creates memories, and
Mm-hmm.
learns.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are essence of who we are, and how you want to describe that can be also another whole discussion.
Okay.
However, the
Okay.
brain, right? The brain is this phenomenal computer that can process actually about 4 billion bits of information per second. It's just wild what the
Wow.
brain can actually do.
Wow.
And so the brain will have, even will trigger thoughts. And it doesn't mean they're negative, but one of the things that's really interesting is when we can step back, and I do teach people how to do this, is to step back and be in your essence of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, you and I, we're very much, I think, present because we're present in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, if once we get into our world, a smell or a comment could trigger us, and then we do things. We can almost see ourselves doing something, and it's like, wait a minute, that's not really where I want to go. So it's
Right.
really this self-awareness, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, so it's a really that's it's a great I enjoy talking about that a lot because we think that sometimes we think our thoughts are us and they're not. They're
Mm-hmm.
actually the brain working, and the whole idea, Alex, is to partner with the brain. So
Mm-hmm.
not to be
Mm-hmm.
angry at these reactions or triggers,
Right.
but to understand them and to give the brain other strategies. So we can teach the brain different ways to think.
Uh-huh.
Um, One of the things is, see, now you got me started. um, we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day,
Wow.
and
Okay.
most of those are repetitive. So,
Uh-huh.
otherwise go a little bit loopy. But we can also refocus, and we can go, okay, that's enough thought for that. Now let's focus on something else, and we can
Mm-hmm.
teach our brain. And a lot of strategies, success strategies, are about mastering your brain,
Mm-hmm.
um, mastering your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and working with your brain. So it's a
Mm.
really, really empowering, I think.
Mm. Right. And how does creativity come into play when it comes to mastering your brain, as you say?
You got great questions. I love it. Well, one
Do
of the
try.
cool things with creativity is especially to expressive arts really uses this is we go into when we get into the arts. People have expressed things like they've lost track of time, and
Right.
where they don't hear other things around them. We enter into a place, it's called liminal space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this place of no time, just really being present with the arts. So, what happens in that time, the brain, the neural pathways start firing in different and new ways. And then when we come out of the arts, our brain is, it's almost, I wouldn't say rewired, but in a way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's really fascinating is people will go, oh, I didn't have this outlook before.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it harvesting in expressive arts, is that people come up with solutions and ideas that they hadn't even been able to think of before.
Mm-hmm.
And so the arts really gives us this place to transcend, perhaps a habit that we've been in, or perhaps a thought pattern that we couldn't break. It really does help transcend those things. So it's quite fascinating, especially working with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because people sometimes are stuck. It helps that to unstuck people,
Mm-hmm.
unstick them, I guess.
Right. And this is an interesting approach because I mean I'm kind of familiar, with what I read and maybe in TV and other media that the basic approach to dealing with trauma is essentially the view of a psychiatrist sitting in a chair and then the patient lying down on the couch and talking, but this is an entirely different approach.
Absolutely, people wonder about that, and people are very nervous about therapy
Mm-hmm.
for that reason, and sometimes are disappointed, also with that type of therapy, and there's many different. I always say there's many roads to Rome. There's many different ways to approach um, resolution, and my training is a Rogerian, which is a very person empowering. So that trusting the person has answers, trusting that the person can tap into their inner wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
help them trust their bodies, which is their barometer. And yeah, so it's really it is very, very fascinating.
Right, and like I said, this approach is really different. If I may ask, how many people practice this method?
Oh wow, that you know what? I don't know. And
Okay.
so what happens is when someone gets their degree, so I have a master's in psychology. Some people have a master's in social work or
Mm-hmm.
counseling. So what happens is then we go and I wouldn't we don't call it specializing, but we go into the fields that really interest us. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because of my background of expressive arts, of course, neuroscience, so I pursued the EMDR. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens is, and I'm not alone in this, other therapists will do, internal family systems, which is a type of deep meditation. And um, I don't know the numbers actually.
Uh-huh.
It is
Uh-huh.
growing, and I
Okay.
think what happens to DBT is growing in popularity, and actually is very encompassing
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of these different methods, where it's not just talk
Mm-hmm.
therapy,
Mm-hmm.
as you were saying. So movement. Um, and using other methods, because we're here we are, you and I, and right now we're doing an auditory uh, connection.
All right.
However, people are visual, we're
Mm-hmm.
auditory, and we're also kinesthetic. So,
Mm-hmm.
and every body is a
Mm-hmm.
little bit different. So some people are kinesthetic learners.
Mm-hmm.
So equine therapy is probably very powerful for them, because there's a lot of movement and with the horses, right? This
Mm-hmm.
connection. And so it's really, it'd be interesting when people look for a therapist is,
Mm-hmm.
interview the therapist and see what fits right for you.
Right.
And, right. Some people therapy is perfect. And I think it's okay, just honor what's right for you and what's
Mm.
right for your brain.
All right. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Great. Great. Okay. So now onto the book. I mean, you did mention that writing is a creative process for you. It's a way to tap into your creativity. But
Yep.
other than being creative, was there any other reason why you wanted to write this book?
Well, what I noticed, well, anxiety warrior specifically,
Mm.
I have a generalized anxiety myself,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
it wasn't something that was maybe recognized until I was in my mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me on a path of discovery. I'm a very curious person, and I also I've always known I'm very lucky and very healthy. I tend to have that type of positivity, and so it made me curious as to why I was feeling so badly when I have such a good life and I'm really healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so then with my clients and we started forming, well, I'm a handout person. I always have lots of handouts for my clients. And
Okay.
we started forming these handouts. And I also started feeling like I was a broken record because most people that come into my practice are struggling with anxiety or stress
Uh-huh.
because some people don't identify anxiety as anxiety, but they have the same symptoms and
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
feel a lot of stress. And so I started doing public talks, even around in my town for the schools, the parent teachers, at
Mm-hmm.
the churches, different groups, because we like all of us in North America don't have enough resources to help people. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of people fall in between the cracks because either
Mm-hmm.
they don't have enough money or they don't have insurance, and that's just all over the place. So I started having all these handouts, and then of course I came home one day and I went, you know what? There's a book here, these
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
handouts, and I'd already written a book, Loving Your Life, and it's in its third edition. And so I went to my editor, and he said, "Well, send me what you got." And he goes, "You're right." So we flushed it out,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that became the first volume, Anxiety Warrior.
Nice. Okay. So this is volume one. So I'm assuming there are
There's a
at least
volume
there's at
two.
least a volume two coming out.
Yeah, there is one out. They're both out now.
Hmm. So I take it then that this anxiety warrior, this then is the it's the basics. Like I mean, it gets a definition of terms and the
Yep.
basics of how to handle it. Am I correct?
Yep. Absolutely. Yes. And one of the things I believe in is if we can understand what we're going through, if we're aware of it, that's
Mm-hmm.
when we can make changes. So what I talk about is, you're right, definitions. Is it anxiety? Is it stress? Is it
Right.
worry?
Right.
Where does it fit? What are some of the symptoms? Physical, cognitive, behavioral, emotional. Are you feeling some of these things? And then I also talk about, where does anxiety come from? And
Mm-hmm.
with my clients, discovered 11 different places. And that sounds a bit ominous. However, it's not. Most of these things you can change
Mm-hmm.
right away, like
Mm-hmm.
in an hour,
All right.
without spending money.
Right.
So when I do, my talks, I talk about these different layers, and it's very empowering for people. So the it people come up and say, "Wow, you know what? I can do this," and I go,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, you can." And
Right.
so yeah, that's the whole point of the book, is this understanding. And then pretty much the books are full of strategies. And I've had guest authors, because I'm not an expert in all things, and their passion is also about, what are the best strategies to manage anxiety and to help you feel better.
Right. Okay. Got that. Okay. So a lot of people, they think they see anxiety warrior, they listen to what we're talking about,
Right.
and so they're a lot of folks are probably thinking, okay, fine, this book is made for people who have trauma, experienced trauma, PTSD, that sort of thing. But is are there things in this book, let's say the average person, the average Joe or Jane, is there something that they can get from reading this book that they can,
Absolutely. And
use in their lives?
actually, yeah, that's a great question, Alex. And it's almost the other way around, is um, the there's most of, like, it's a human aspect that we have anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and anxiety in itself is not a bad thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
really an unpleasant emotion that's tapping us on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, pay attention to something in your life here, and
Okay.
change it."
Uh-huh.
And so the trauma actually is at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these things are, things like second guessing,
Mm-hmm.
perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
overstimulation, social
Mm-hmm.
beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
self doubt, being highly sensitive. These are things that we struggle with as humans. And things like multiple decision making, finding a job, moving, finances, like the reality, and knowing what your limits are. So yeah, and even just life in general, it doesn't just dole out stresses evenly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
I was just talking to a young father, and most of the time he manages well, but a lot of things were on his plate, and then his go-to wasn't really a healthy go-to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about strategies to keep up our resilience, to keep
Mm-hmm.
feeding ourselves, so that when life happens,
Mm-hmm.
we know how to navigate it. We still will feel the stress. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that you're not going to feel anxious. However, you'll be able to go, you know what? This might be a rough 2 weeks. I can get through it. Or this may not be a great time, but I can get through it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference. And certainly lowering some of those unpleasant feelings, and then just going, well, you know what is that's okay over there, but now I'm going to focus on this phenomenal day that's sunny and warm, and my family or myself, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Okay. Got that. Okay. Great. Great. Okay, Elka, in this, we're winding down right now. So, in this last couple of minutes of this interview, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share, maybe to inspire listeners?
Yes, actually, there's two words that I start out
Oh, go
in the
for it.
book and I end in the book. And if you get anything out of it, is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Is the more aware you are, that's when you can make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is be easy on yourself, be easy on your brain. Life is practice,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out what works for you and practice. Just
Mm-hmm.
practice. And it does get better. We can do it. We can absolutely do this.
Right. Okay. Great. Great. Great words right there. So, practice and I'm sorry,
Awareness.
awareness. There we go. Awareness and practice. Okay, great then. So, in closing, then, our guest is Elke Scholz. Her book is Anxiety Warrior, and mind you, it's a volume one, so there's going to be a volume two coming out soon, sooner or later. And you can find it on Amazon. So, Elke, thank you very much for being an author story. It was a lot of fun speaking with you today.
Well, thank you, Alex. A privilege. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, everyone, check out Anxiety Warrior and go ahead and hit that subscribe button to get alerted to all the people and the stories we have on this channel. So, catch you guys next time on Author Story, the home of authors and people with stories that matter.